in the space of religious ideologies, it's hard when you start seeing that people value like only certain things, but they don't value their health. I'm a Christian. A lot of Christians we don't do that. Like we don't do that very well at all. God says that like you were bought with a price, your bodies are not your own. This vessel that I've given you is mine. And it's something that like you are to manage and steward. But part of the deception that creeps in is from this conventional medical world where they say that your genetics matter more than your lifestyle. That's the big lie that is told to us.
Can you expand into that area where you've seen for hormonal health, for women, for getting into equilibrium? And what are the big things that you see women doing that make the most difference?
A lot of women dealing with estrogen dominance, for example. If you don't detoxify the estrogen metabolites, oftentimes through your gut, and that's where you can start seeing a lot of painful PMS and bloating and puffiness, and it's difficult to lose weight. We want to start getting rid of the things that are trapped in your cells. But the first step is just...
So I'm here today with Dr. Austin Lake. And this is going to be a very lively, very informative conversation. Dr. Lake has been deep into the health space and the natural healing world for a long time, has a lot of wisdom to share. I'm looking forward to getting right into it right now. So if you could give us a snapshot of where you are today, what your mission is, and then how you got into this. What was the stimulations and how did you come to where you're at this moment?
I appreciate it again. Thank you for having me on the show. And I love what you're doing and the work you're putting in to advance. I think what really matters in life, I think a lot of people get caught up in some details that are fun and interesting, but they don't necessarily lead to a life-changing experience. And so I just want to say, I just really appreciate you and admire you for all the work you're doing, Ian. But as far as my journey, currently what I do is a functional medicine practitioner is, I guess, what my title would be. I'm board certified in functional medicine, but I'm not a physician, so I don't do any prescription medication. My doctorate was actually in physiotherapy, depending on where you are in the world of physical therapy, back in 2017. And so that was kind of my intro into just getting a basic understanding of how the body worked. Very blessed to not at an earlier age when I was younger, and I'll kind of get into the story a little bit. My brother had chemotherapy when he was 14 because he had leukemia. And I just saw like the devastation that occurred through what he had to go through from a pharmaceutical perspective. And so I had a huge interest in health, but never had a strong interest in the pharmaceutical side of it. And so I was always trying to figure out a way that I could get a deeper understanding of the human body without having to go down that road. And thankfully, it worked out with the physiotherapy. But I spent another 3 years after that getting my board certification in functional medicine. That's where I really felt like the tools and the puzzle pieces came together for me, really understanding how to actually help people. And a lot of this was stemming from issues with my own family, even with my own health. When I was in my 20s, had a lot of chronic pain, chronic fatigue, just didn't feel well. And my family, and as I was telling you before the show started, mom has a pretty serious autoimmune condition. She has adult onset Still's disease, which is pretty rare. My dad has had multiple heart attacks since he was 42, now has a congestive heart failure. We've lost him a couple times on the table where they've had to resuscitate him and bring him back. And some crazy stories, some crazy miracles in that whole process where I really do feel like God intervened and went beyond what you would expect to happen. And it's just really a testament of his faith and just what God is capable of doing, in my opinion. But all that has kind of led to me being in this health space of really wanting to help people not experience what we've experienced. And if you are experiencing it, how to help try to get you out of it. And I am a firm believer, as I know you are, that the body is designed to heal. And a lot of times we have this idea that our bodies are broken and that they are incapable of healing. But more times than not, we're lacking what we need for our body, for our cells to thrive. And once we start to kind of have that perspective, and that's what I always try to portray to my clients, is once you understand like what's missing and how to help to facilitate that within your cells, your body is more than willing to start fixing things and start to repair damage and actually get you to where you can feel like you're thriving again. And so that's what I do now with clients. I work primarily with women who are dealing with a lot of autoimmune issues and hormonal imbalances and chronic pain, chronic fatigue, thyroid problems. All of it stems back to people would say, you're not an endocrinologist, you're not an OBGYN, like how can you comment on those kind of things? And I just simply say like, I'm focused on the cellular health of what they're dealing with. And so when you focus on the cellular health, you really do start to see that, as we're alluding to pre-show, your mitochondria are in every cell of your body. Like they're driving literally the creation of energy. And when you don't have that, due to deficiencies or toxins or whatever else is going on in your cell, it doesn't function nearly as well as it could. So really what we're trying to do with our clients is get at the root cause of what they're dealing with in terms of whether it's gut health issues or these cellular health issues, ultimately is what we're trying to focus on. But it manifests in a lot of different ways. So women come to me with, I don't feel well, I can't lose weight. And we're like, okay, here's a meal plan. Here's how we can optimize your supplement regimen. Here's how we can optimize your circadian rhythm. Make sure we're not lathering your skin up with a bunch of endocrine disrupting chemicals. Let's make sure your water is filtering out fluoride. Let's make sure that you're breathing clean air, like all these foundational things of healing. And they're often, when are we going to start working on my hormones? And I'm like, we've been working on hormones since day one. They're like, your hormones are responding to your environment and your environment is toxic. And so if we start to restore that environment, then your hormones are, because they're messenger molecules, can start to become balanced. But technically hormones are always out of balance because they're constantly adapting to what your current state needs and your current environment is demanding. And so that's a big part of what we're trying to communicate with the clients. And that's currently what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you've been on the ground, really one-on-one for quite a long time. Now you're actually supporting very large audiences with your work because of what you've learned. And until you do that one on the ground thing, is all theory until it becomes practical. And you've had to practically measure the things that your patients are doing, your clients are doing, so that they are getting results, because otherwise it's just a waste of time. It's a big money-making scheme out there of just extending death instead of extending life. We're in the realm of extending life.
Yeah. I love that you say it that way, because that's exactly what it is. People will give me a hard time online sometimes. I don't read comments hardly at all, but when I do occasionally, I'll notice that people are like, oh, you're just trying to make money off of supplements, or you're just a quack, or you're not a real doctor, or whatever they're saying. And the reality is that I work with people that nobody else has been able to really help to a certain extent. Like, people come to me last because I'm the guy online. I didn't always used to be online. I used to have a brick and mortar practice in Colorado, and we switched to being virtual after COVID because we realized we could. And we started, because we're not prescribing medications, we're not doing procedures and surgery, we're really just doing glorified coaching is really what it comes down to. But we do help people with their lab tests by interpreting that to a certain extent. And we make sure that we have a good framework in place to walk them through it. But the reality is that, yeah, working with people one-to-one, that's where I started. And so I started sharing stories and information that I was learning actively online. And that's where my online presence started to increase. But it wasn't the other way around. I'm not an influencer than trying to coach people. Like, I've been coaching people and seeing patients in real life for years. And that's where the social media stuff came from. But people often think there's a lot of influencers out there that don't actually have much experience. And so that, for me, that was never the case, thankfully.
Yeah, you got to deliver the goods. And it's just like what I had to go through for 21 years. I had a life-threatening situation at 46. I had 36 months to live with a tumor, heart disease, and liver problem. And based on medical projections or predictions, what do you want to call them, I couldn't stand it, because my uncles had that happen back in 1978 when I was 20 years old, and they died within the first year just taking the treatments. And that didn't make any sense. That was 2004. You think 2004, you're not in the dark ages anymore, but it really was the dark ages in the medical world. And I'm not against medicine. I think that's very helpful in many things. When it comes to these kind of issues, it's a lack of knowledge. And just like you watched your dad go through all that, and my mom and dad were told by my oldest brother, who was a medical doctor for 30 years, when he first went to med school in 1972, he started to get this information about how eggs and butter and animal fats are bad, and how you got to start eating margarine and all this stuff, right? So they were so proud of their oldest son being a doctor, they said, oh, we got to do that right away. That's the new information. Within 12 years, my dad had angina, and between 52 and 64 years old. That started at 52 for him. Angina, 2 open heart surgeries, bypasses, aortal aneurysm, and then died at 76 years old. The last 13 years of his life was a total struggle. Okay, that was messed up. And that's all based upon incorrect information. So getting back to the simple things, I like what you talk about of more of a scriptural stance as far as, hey, what does the body really want? Yes, healing is inside the body. The body does rebuild itself to a blueprint if you support it. But man, there's not a lot of support out there when you look at everybody trying to make money off of other people's illness.
Right. Yeah. And I think, so I shouldn't say always, I've more recently been trying to, for my own sanity, just been trying to theorize why that is. I think it's even less about money when you're talking about the big corporations that profit, big pharma that profits off of our sickness. I think there is a huge money component. Don't get me wrong, there's no denying that. But I think beyond that, at the root of really of that is it's a death cult. There's a lack of value on life. And you see maybe even an attack on life, to where you hear these ideas of depopulation and how we have to reduce our population around the globe. And there's been a lot of people that are very outspoken about that are highly in high positions. So there is definitely a stated agenda that life is not valued and we need only certain people matter. and not all life matters. And we see it in many different ways with abortion and disease within our world and sickness and sick care and pharmaceuticals, and how medical error is the third leading cause of death. There's a lot of death surrounding our conventional medical system. And so I really think there is like the wrong, you're going to have to know who your enemy is. You know, like what you're up against. And it's not to say this is a left or right kind of thing. It's way beyond that. It's more about like people who value life and people who don't. I think anyone who values life, I'm on your team, and we should be on the same team together. People that aren't on that side and they don't care about life, then it's like, that's a problem. And that's what we need to go after and addressing. And so from a spiritual, biblical perspective, I believe that God values each and every single life. And I think that from the beginning of our conception until the end of our last breath, like we are valued and we are made in the image of God. And that's a big deal. And when you look at our health, you start looking at how, I think it's 1 Corinthians 6:9, somewhere in there, that God says that like you were bought with a price, your bodies are not your own. So therefore honor God with your bodies as temples of the Holy Spirit. And the thing that stood up to me in that whole verse was, I always think that this is my body, but God clearly says that like you were bought with the price, like your body, this is not your own. Like this vessel that I've given you is mine. And it's something that like you are to manage and steward. And so I think people, especially I'm a Christian, a lot of Christians don't do that. Like we don't do that very well at all. And it's hard to in the space of religious ideologies, it's hard when you start seeing that people value like only certain things, but they don't value their health. And I think it's really hard to be effective and to be the hands and feet of Christ when you don't feel well and you have brain fog and you have no energy and you're sabotaging your health with these little eating poor food and not sleeping and doing all these things that we all do, and just forgetting the fact that we are called to be intentional and to take care of this temple that God's given us. And I think there are ways that we can do that, but part of the deception that creeps in, I think, is from this conventional medical world where they say that your genetics matter more than your lifestyle and like what you do, and that you can't really change much of how you feel and how you function because it's all been passed down through your parents or your grandparents. And I think that's the big lie that is told to us, is that we have no real active involvement in how we feel. And over time, we start to believe that, to where we then default to what's convenient and what's easy, because why wouldn't we? If it doesn't really make a difference, why wouldn't we just do what's easy? Like, why wouldn't we just grab the convenience foods that are highly processed? Like, why wouldn't we just stay up late and watch Netflix? Or why wouldn't, all these things that or just not move our bodies or whatever the case is. So that's the kind of stuff that like, if you get at the root and the why of why people are inactive and why they're not taking care of themselves, for me, that's a big why, is that they don't truly believe that it really makes a difference and that they don't really have an active role in this whole thing that we call health. And so that's what I always try to draw people's attention to, so we can start from there and then start to lay the groundwork of what steps they need to take.
Yeah, it's a psychological war because you're dealing with a massive propaganda machine, an international population reduction for sure. And it's not a conspiracy. They're quite open about it. And it's obvious because people are getting more and more disease and more sickness all the time. And regardless of faith, regardless of what a person believes in, what are you doing here? Where'd you come from? Who is God? What is he doing? So on. Those, regardless of that, people have to, at the end of the day, come crashing down on the ground, like what I did, where I realized, hey, my most valuable asset in the physical world, I'm not talking about the spiritual world, just physical things, is the body that I was given. Because I don't recall getting an invoice, and I don't recall having a human loan for my body that I had to pay. I also don't recall anybody ever charging me for the air I breathe. They haven't figured out how to tax that yet. Maybe they have. Okay. But we know we are absolutely stewards because we're of the earth, earthy. Our bodies were created from the earth elements. When our bodies expire, they go back to the earth elements. Right. And we are totally responsible for it every speck of the way. As soon as we're adults, when we're children, we're going to be subjected to our parents' understanding. And if they're in the propaganda machine, okay, we're going to be sucked into that matrix or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
But really, I have no excuse. I can't drag my past behind me. I cannot blame my genetics. I don't play the blame game anyway. I don't even blame myself. I just say, hey, I have to take responsibility. That happened 21 years ago, or I was going to die physically. And we have 7 children. Our youngest was 6. That's a major responsibility. And it was like, what's going on? This is not the way it's supposed to be. Or just finding out how to move the end of your life. Like when you're 46 years old and the end of your life shows up at 49, you go, what is it doing there? I didn't even feel that coming, but there it is. So now how do we move that out? And then just the learning, just like what you've had to learn, the practical things, the common sense stuff, not the fancy theoretical hopes, but it's that it's not just a believe. I mean, it all starts with, hey, we know the truth is there. We know it's out there. And I don't take sides any longer with anyone. I take sides with the truth. I don't want people taking sides with me, because if they take sides with me, what are they doing? They're going to follow me? No, you're a data point. I am or we call it data point, I guess, if you properly pronounce it in the United States. But we are data points or transfer points of what we've learned in order to share that with people, so they don't ever follow us. They follow what is true, because we're able to deflect them from getting distracted with us, to be transparent vessels, to get them to the truth, because that's what they actually require. And that's what I required.
Right.
So if I want people to follow my every word and do everything I say and believe everything I believe because I believe it, then I'm some kind of a narcissistic megalomaniac.
Cult leader, yeah.
Yeah, cult leader, yeah, because you mentioned the death cult. I've been talking about the death culture for a long time now, because I saw, we're little kids, we grow up and we see our grandparents get old and die. And we become adults and we watch our parents get old and die. And so then we think it's our turn. This is not the way it is, because that's only propaganda. And you've only got 70 years. The average life is 70 years. Okay, right. There were people recorded that lived over 900 years at one point.
Right. Yeah,
why did they do that? Right. And so it's not about how long. So today, Austin, you are at a certain level of health that you can measure, and you're a very healthy man. And tomorrow, because of what you know and because of what you implemented and execute on and replace bad habits with good habits, you're going to be a little bit healthier tomorrow than you are today in every category. So that's the only measurement that there is. You're going to be here as long as you're here, because you're going to get called home at some point. And until that day, you want to be more and more functional. And that's because you have a mission, and that mission is to relay this information and to make sure that people have access to it. And really, it's freely given to us. Oh yeah, there was, in my world, last 10 years of $35 million invested into research and development and being able to learn and connect with people who had the information. Because I'm not a researcher, I just research researchers. But that money was given to me through learning about how to support people's health, and they investing in themselves, and me using their money very carefully to return that to them by greater knowledge. And that's really what you've been doing. And that's why you have an influence with people to listen to the truth you're pointing them to. That's what I'm seeing happening. And I see you in the future at a very significant impact because of that grounded, the spiritual side of your world, knowing that the truth is contained in the scriptures, and yet it's misinterpreted significantly. It is buried. It is never really spoken about at the definitive levels. Whereas at the end of the day, you're on a solid ground. You're either on sand with your whole foundation shifting under you, or you're on a solid rock with both feet planted, with equilibrium, and you know where you stand and you know where you're going. And when people come to you with significant issues, or even just healthy people coming looking to get healthier, you've got the data that you can share with them because you've been on the ground doing it. So you're just getting started, and so am I. I turned 67 in June, and I feel like I'm just getting started. So this is a very interesting synchronicity here.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I just got prophesied over or something. That was awesome. I appreciate that. So yeah, very encouraging, but I think you're right. I think, again, that belief that you just clearly believe, that statement you just clearly believe, that's so transformative. And I think even for me, hearing that, of thinking of breaking that belief of, no, I can improve and get younger tomorrow compared to today. That's, again, I don't know that I've thought of it quite like that. So I appreciate you sharing that, because that is a good insight, a good mindset shift that I think, I'm sure your audience has heard you talk about that, but I haven't. That's the first time I've heard you state that. So that was really cool for me to just get that. So I appreciate that.
Well, now, one thing you're dealing with a lot is women's health, which I found to be a good challenge, a really good kind of challenge, because you're going to learn so much. Most of our audience is also about 70% women, and you've tapped on hormonal health and gut health. I just recently found out, and I should have known this, but I did not know that the biggest endocrine organ in our body is our intestinal tract with the mucosal layer. That's where we're producing most of our hormones. And focusing on the mucosal layer is a big deal. It's not just taking probiotics. There's a lot more than that. But can you expand into that area where you've seen for hormonal health, for women, for getting into equilibrium? And what are the big things that you see women doing that make the most difference?
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought that up. So yeah, so much is connected back to your gut. You mentioned your hormonal production. You can also state 2/3 of your immune system is also coming from your gut. 90 to 95% of your serotonin production, which is critical for making melatonin and also stabilizing mood and controlling appetite. all coming from your gut. So a lot of this gut connection it's the first, in my opinion, it's one of the first lines of defense that gets broken down through a lot of, again, lifestyle factors. And a lot of women dealing with, let's just say, estrogen dominance, for example. You have, when you're making estrogen and you're metabolizing it, if you don't detoxify the estrogen metabolites, oftentimes through your gut, they recirculate as weak estrogens, and then they can get recirculated and create more of this estrogen dominant state to where relative to progesterone, your estrogen is too high. And that's where you can start seeing a lot of painful PMS and bloating and puffiness, and just it's difficult to lose weight. So a lot of women are going to even things like PCOS or endometriosis, all these different kinds of conditions. And so a lot of women that are struggling with these issues, a lot of them can have issues related back to their gut. And because when your gut gets disrupted, and one way you can think about your intestinal tract is like a big donut or like a big tube going from top to bottom. And that tube on the inside is technically like separate from the inside of your body. Like going from your mouth to your butt is like separate. It's technically not really going through into your cells. It's creating some separation. So that separation, that barrier is really important. And when people have high stress, or they take a lot of ibuprofen or Tylenol, they eat a processed diet, they have bad eating hygiene where maybe they're not chewing their food well enough, they're eating in a sympathetic nervous system state where their body's not ready to rest and digest their food. Oftentimes their microbiome, which is this balance of the bacteria within your gut, your bacteria can become imbalanced, which is known as dysbiosis or an imbalanced microbiome. And so when that happens, that's when you can start to see a further breakdown of your intestinal lining, which is, I'm sure you guys, your audience is probably aware of this term, but leaky gut is a pretty common term that wasn't so common 10 years ago, but is becoming more in vogue now. Rightfully, it should have been in vogue much longer conventionally. But anyway, so the whole point is that your membrane that is supposed to be selectively permeable, meaning that it should allow certain things in and not allow other things into your bloodstream in your body. It starts allowing a lot of things come through that aren't supposed to be there. And so if you're eating these foods, or you're having poor breakdown of food, and you're having a lot of bacterial imbalance, or you're having a lot of digestive waste, all of this stuff can start to get into your bloodstream, and it starts to create a bit of an immune system response to where your immune system can become a little bit hyperreactive, or it can start creating these autoantibodies that can then start to create an attack on other tissues in your body. So for a lot of women that are dealing with a hypothyroid issue, about 80% of those hypothyroid conditions are autoimmune related, meaning they're coined as Hashimoto's. But a lot of that's because the tissue, your thyroid tissue itself, is getting these foreign invaders, or whatever you want to call it, in the tissue that your immune system is then going after and attacking. And so you can start to see an attack on your thyroid, for example, where you don't feel energized, you don't feel it that great, you start having sluggish bowels, thinning up hair in your head, you have low energy, brain fog. All these things can be just because you have poor gut health. And so when we're working with our clients, the first thing we have to do is start to fix that problem with their gut. The food is the first place we like to start. Getting them on an elimination style, AIP style eating plan is a good place to start, just to remove any potential immune system triggers that could be perpetuating the problem. So we want to stop the influx of things that are not so great, and we want to start getting rid of the things that are trapped in your cells. But the first step is just stop bringing in things that are not good for your body. That's hard for people because, again, if you have a belief that what you do doesn't really matter, or that the food doesn't make a huge difference, or you might as well just eat healthy foods, but you don't really have a good comparison of what that looks like. You don't really know what's healthy for your cells and healthy for your immune system, then you could be going on perpetuating a problem that a lot of it could be reduced just by stopping the influx of toxins through your diet. So that's really important. But the other thing that can happen along with that, in terms of the estrogen, we were kind of talking about your hormones. If you start getting this gut problem, your body can start having elevated levels of this thing called beta-glucuronidase, which beta-glucuronidase is responsible for trying to, again, break down this estrogen metabolites and helping to actually detoxify from it. So for a lot of them that have gut problems, they also have a high estrogen, like I said before, and it's primarily because they have high beta-glucuronidase. And so you can fix that through improving your gut, and you can start to see a reduction in your estrogen, and you can have healthier, balanced hormones between progesterone and estrogen. But a lot of that is, again, getting back to your gut health. So yeah, your gut is super important. It's the starting point for all this healing that we like to do with our clients to help their bodies heal themselves. And then from there, it gets into a little bit more nuances of what a particular person may be dealing with, if it's mycotoxins from mold, or if they're having heavy metals, or if they're having parasitic issues, or whatever the case may be. But all these things can be drivers of an ongoing immune system problem that is creating chronic levels of inflammation that then directly affect the cellular components of your cellular health, to where mitochondria are not able to produce ATP, which is the active form of energy that our bodies are trying to utilize to function. So Yeah, it's super important.
Yeah, that's a good layout. And it does lay a foundation, because anything really that is not naturally occurring that comes from proper resource, if it's packaged or if it's synthetic or whatever, people are definitely not deficient in Tylenol and ibuprofen. They are taking a Band-Aid approach, which is very harmful. And it's a matter of educating people back to what is the basics and what is really causing major problems. One of the things I noticed when I started doing mathematics on the body is I thought, okay, everybody talks about diet, exercise, sleep, this and this is very common, right? We're very familiar with it, but nobody was addressing the 11,000 liters of air per day that our body breathes. So you breathe 4 million liters a year, 40 million liters every decade. And in the air is all these nanoparticles. And they are not visible. They are not sensible. They're there. 10 billion pounds of tire dust that wears out the treads, and rubber, cotton, epoxies, resins, plastics, metals, chemicals, ceramics, all these different elements that we need other elements that come from nature to support our body that are actually not in the food. So what I found out was that at the age of 64 is when I found out, this is 3 years ago, that I had accumulated a massive amount of these nanoparticles into my system through breathing, and my blood circulation, which is only 5 liters of blood pumping every 60 seconds to every cell in my body, pumps 7,200 liters of blood a day. So it's super efficient at bringing this stuff in and depositing it everywhere. Sure. So the older people get, the more they accumulate. And I learned a real simple thing, that all you do is you take a concentrated sea mineral liquid it has to be purified, because the sea minerals are very contaminated. So it has to go through a process of purification. Add that to water, because it's not in the food anymore. Because ever since the antediluvian world, where there was no rain for thousands of years, it's been raining distilled water on the earth that washed all the minerals out of the soil primarily. And so it's not in the food. So we go and get that. I put it in water. I drank 3 liters a day of equivalent to 5 milligrams of concentrated sea minerals. And that gave my body the raw material to produce excess amounts of blood with my bone marrow. And if you and I had known this when we were 20, our bone marrow would have stayed dark red. But because we weren't told, and we don't have the elements for the production facility, atrophy. Just if you don't use muscles, they atrophy. You don't use your bone marrow, it turns yellow, produces less stem cells, produces less blood. But I still had about 35% of my body at that point was dark red bone marrow in the larger bones. And I went on high volume blood production and dumped so much stuff out of my body, I couldn't believe it. I had to believe it because it actually happened, but I coughed for 2 months of that first year, white glue out of my lungs. I never had an infection. I haven't been sick for years. No infection, no high temperature, coughing volumes of white glue out of my lungs. So when that happened, I'm like, everybody's having this happen to them. This is an individual. We're all subject to this stuff. These are the deep core level things that we have to get out, because we are concerned about what we eat, but we only eat a small amount of food, really. Sure. We don't drink that much fluid. So I did that for a year, and then now I've tapered down to a couple of liters a day with not nearly as much concentration. But I'd be interested to have your thoughts on that.
So that's wild. I mean, you said like the nanoparticle technology. Is that kind of what you're ingesting?
No, it's not. No, it's just purified, because it's actually macro and micro minerals. What you're breathing is all the nanoparticles, because just tire dust alone, that's one of 1,000 things that are in the air, and there's 10 billion pounds a year, and there's no rubber on the road. It's all a mile and a half above the highway. So what I'm talking about is the raw material your body absolutely demands in order to produce the blood, because you're only going to produce a small amount of plasma, and you produce less as you get older. Sure. So the less you produce, the more you breathed, the worse it becomes. Then your liver and kidneys get overtaxed. They can't keep up. So when your body produces a large volume of clean blood, now the body intelligence allows it to dump the dirty blood out in the bowel movements and purge my lungs. It's crazy.
With and like you were saying, you never had an infection or anything in respiratory in the past that would indicate that you had a special of getting rid of more of this glue, this white glue substance. What did you have in terms of, I'm curious, in terms of bowel movements, did you notice like any more like macroscopic type parasites or anything like that? Or what was that experience like? I mean, obviously I'm interested in this stuff. Some other people may not want to know, but I'm very curious.
Yeah, I'd already done a lot of parasite cleansing leading up to that, because I was told about parasites way back from, you can zap them, you do different elements and different herbal medicinals to get rid of them. So I didn't notice any parasites at all. But for the first 3 months or so, I would often have liquid bowel movements, not diarrhea. I felt fantastic the whole time, but I noticed a large amount of very dark, almost looked like soot coming out of my bowels. Wow. And that tapered off in about 3 months. The other thing that happened is I got high blood pressure during that time. And what I mean by high blood pressure, it went to 180 over 140 for about 4 months. And that didn't bother me at all because I knew that was indicating that my cardiovascular system was very stiff from all the stuff I've been breathing, because it gets into every muscle wall of arteries, veins, and capillaries. And that over that year, so that was about halfway in where I had that 4-month span of high blood pressure. And then I kept drinking the same amount of salt water. And then it went down to normal by the end of the year. And it's like, okay, now my cardiovascular system is elastic, supple, youthful.
Mm-hmm.
Like really, I feel like I have double the lung capacity, but it had no, like when you're sick, there's flavor. It's the grossest thing. You got all these different colors coming out and you got a temperature. None of that, just this white, thick glue. I'd have to get an ab exercise every 30 minutes of my waking day to cough this stuff up for 2 months. Wow. It was pretty wild.
That is pretty wild. And I have to, so as far as these minerals go, is this more like a humic and fulvic acid kind of thing? Or like what exactly, I guess I don't know exactly what these types of minerals are specifically.
Well, humic and fulvic acid play a role. I know a supply which is absolutely pure. Many of the humic and fulvic acids have heavy metals in them. So you have to have certified pure stuff. But no, this comes from ocean. It's actually a seawater extract that's hyper concentrated. So it has most of the sodium chloride is dropped out. But you've got all the macro and trace minerals in there. And you just pour it in water. You don't even have to melt it. I started out with some sea salt, but I found out the sea salt was very contaminated. Even though it certifies pure, the government standards are too low.
Yeah, I'm not shocked there. That's interesting. Yeah, I would have to. So do you think those trace minerals in there and obviously the macros, do you think those are, as far as like percentages, do you know what the percentages are in terms of compared to like typical trace mineral supplement? Like, is it a much greater percentage compared to those, or do you know how that relates?
Yeah, temporarily, it's 100 times strength normal ocean water.
Okay.
So that's the measurement. It's all based upon weight, but it's fully soluble. Wow. So what that does, that gives your bone marrow that absolutely required raw material to produce more plasma. Because back in the world wars over the years, when they would run out of blood for transfusions for soldiers who had lost their blood, they would go to the seawater and they would get it as clean as possible. They would filter it and then they would knock it down to 1/3 strength. So they'd add 2/3 distilled water to the ocean water, because ocean water is 35 grams per liter. That's really high. So they would knock it down to 10 grams approximately per liter and intravenously inject that into soldiers' bodies. And within 2 weeks, they had perfect blood. Wow. And then another doctor in France found out about that and started using what's called isotonic to do IV injections to help people get rid of disease, not even knowing the functionality that it was actually blood production. But yeah, it's a very important thing for everyone. Yeah. And the earlier you start, the better.
And now that you're describing it, it makes a lot of sense, and it actually is fairly simple. Like why the end result would be more blood and more plasma and more stem cells like that. That I don't know why when you first were talking about it, it kind of sounded a little bit confusing to me, but now it just seems a really simple idea. I'm gonna have to dive a little bit deeper into this. We'll talk after this, but that's really fascinating. I don't know how I haven't quite heard of this yet. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, the reason you never heard about it, because I never heard about it. We had invested tens of millions of dollars into research, and I never heard about that till I was 64 years old. Okay, wow, that's like a core foundational thing here.
So do you think that's why, because I know you're pretty big into like magnesium chloride, like topically, I believe, right? Because you for the absorption and all that, and obviously bypassing that's just digestive tract. But do you think that's why minerals, because I notice a huge benefit with my clients when they start taking trace minerals, and even if it is clean humic and fulvic acid, like they start feeling a lot better. And I noticed that from myself too, just from magnesium's perspective. But do you think that's why people, they feel so much better when they start giving their minerals more balanced, that they're tapping into this stem cell perspective? Is that, you think that's a big part of it, just on a smaller level?
I think the humic and the fulvic are two macro components that are missing from most soils because of all the monocropping. So supplementing with that, just as long as it's a super pure form, it's definitely going to promote plasma production. And you add that in, and I have humic and fulvic here as well. I take small amounts every day. And it's just in the form of a powder. I just put it in with a little smoothie that I make for my gut health. Yeah. And yes, it's profoundly effective. And it's energy because it's electrical. These are electrolytes. And so it lights you up. It gives you electrical energy. And our bodies are 80% electrolytic fluid. People say we're 80% water. There's not a chance we have 80% water. Cry me a tear. Does that taste like water?
Yeah, pretty salty. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, and I think that's when you start viewing your body as a electrical being. It really, when you start thinking about all the interferences from these other frequencies that are around us with all these things that are right in front of me right now, and just how better people feel when they go to the beach or they're actually taking their shoes off and electrically grounding and around the frequency of the ocean. And there's so many healing frequencies out, not so many, but there are healing frequencies out there that directly interfere or affect this electrical vessel that we're walking in. So yeah, 100%. I think it's so critically important. And again, when you go to a hospital, it's like the opposite of that, right? And I think in earlier days, I think they were tapping into this, especially with Nikola Tesla and things that he was doing using frequencies and atmospheric energy and all the stuff that he was getting into that the government quickly shut down. I think we've been about this stuff for a long time and even well before that. And I think our culture is moving so quickly away from this whole idea with having this electrical device in our pocket that literally on new warning says if it's closer than, 5 millimeters, whatever the distance is, basically if it's touching your skin, it can cause cancer. So it's because of radiation or whatever else. So I think this is a whole topic that I wouldn't call myself proficient with beyond just the basic understanding of electrolytes and all that stuff. But I guess and I don't want to turn this into my interview with you, but what have you found in terms of this frequency stuff that we were talking about? Like what have you incorporated in that into your healing?
Yeah, I did a deep dive starting in 2008 into pulse electromagnetic frequencies. That was the start of it.
Yeah.
And then I found out that the cells need to be shielded and the hemocomfulvic are real shields because we're getting hit with radiation that is not human natural frequencies at all.
Right.
And that shields us to start with internally. And I met a gentleman named Robert Connolly in 2008, and I introduced to him pulse electromagnetic frequency devices. He's, EMF is bad. I go, no, this one is the right one. So he found out that was true by getting some very big upgrades in his health. So what he did, he raised significant amount of funding and he traveled all over the world and he studied Tesla's medicine. So there's a documentary on Tubi that you can go in, and if you go into Tubi, it's free. Type in Tesla's medicine. There's a 3-part series and he's published the first one so far. And he talks all about the PEMF, the light frequency therapies, the sound therapies, all those things. And it's a really good educational piece on it. But boy, does it ever tie in because you got to reset your system. We are hammered with these dumb technologies. They call them smartphones. They're dumb phones.
It's right. True.
Yeah, they're not good tech, but you can get protective devices that actually work. You can wear things that protect you as well. And so I do. And most of the stuff you wear don't work. And they do muscle testing. And I've seen all the variations of those. I don't buy that. Yeah. But what I do buy is when you have much deeper sleep, much more solid, consistent energy, way better brain power, a better running at endocrine system, and your whole digestive tract, because digestion is hit so hard with radiation.
Absolutely.
Testosterone for a male, progesterone for a female. So yeah, there's a deep dive in there. And you and I, what we'll do is we'll have lots of interviews in the future because you have gone very deep on the practical, common sense, physical, results-based. That's where your research is. And I love that. I didn't get that opportunity to just be one-on-one. I'd be more 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000, but getting a feedback loop because we manufacture products that are direct to consumer. So we don't have a big buffer zone. Our stuff, we only have 21 products because I found out that most stuff, it was okay, but it wasn't awesome. So what you're doing right now is you're becoming the best of the best in your field. And that is something called excellence. And all of us should be the best of what we do. And everyone listening has a super gift, just like you do, just like I do, to be able to become the best at what they're doing. That means that every part of their being, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, domestically, financially, and environmentally, have got to go towards what we'll call perfect health.
Sure.
Because the only goal to set is perfect health. If you're going to be healthy, set that goal. And then God will bring in all the tools, the wisdom, the knowledge, the raw materials that are required. That's what I learned over the years. And that's what you're learning right now. These core elements that people have to look at. You're looking at the foundational level for women, particularly on their gut health, their hormonal system, how the thyroid is going to function, and dealing with if you don't deal with that, you can try all the other stuff, all the Band-Aids out there. There's hundreds of thousands of supplements, but because you're results driven, so you are on your way to be the most advanced, the most excellent person in your field. And I'm the same thing. And you can't come up with it. You have to ask for it. I had to ask for it. I didn't. There's no way. I can't take credit for a single thing that I have learned. It was given to me from people who had lifetimes of experience in each of the 15 operating systems in the body.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so true. And on that asking for wisdom up front, that's exactly what I did. And I believe in, because again, what the scripture says, ask for wisdom and be given to you abundantly. I think we receive not because we ask not. And I think so much of people going through these health struggles and whatever other struggles are really going through, it's not a prosperity gospel. It's truly just is biblical wisdom and knowledge that can be passed down. Like you were saying, there's so much buried in the scripture that is like hidden, and it's concealed for a reason, because if people knew, imagine what our culture, our civilization would be like if we're all thriving. I think we will get there. I think God promises that we will get there at some point. But I do think asking for wisdom is the simplest thing to do, and it will be given. And I think, especially in our day and age now, where there's so much information, I think the hard part is, I think that the truth of oil is always bubble to the surface. But I think there's a lot of propaganda, like you were saying, that is trying so desperately to conceal the truth. But I think it's just a matter of time. I think more truth has come out in the last few years than I have seen in the last 15 years. But maybe it's because we're all actively looking for it, and it's always been there. But I think we're just, more of us are looking for it. And so more people are putting in time and effort into researching it and finding the truth, because we're so hungry for it. And I think that's a good thing. But yeah, it's cool. I'm not sure what else to say about that.
Yeah. One thing you know for sure is that there is perfect knowledge and perfect truth. It's always existed and always will exist. Our request is that we are given that access. And if we ask to spend it on ourselves, then that's greed, it's lust, it's whatever. But if we're asking in order to give, because, this whole world that is revolving around economical collapses in Wall Street and all this ridiculous noise,
right?
I found out that money is an entity. It's actually an energetic entity that's always existed. And there's more money than there is air. So when you breathe in air, you're not charged for that. And you don't breathe in air and hold your breath and try to have bigger lungs and hold your breath.
Sure.
You breathe it out again. So money is looking for people who are givers. That whole prosperity gospel thing is the biggest scam ever. Give money and you get more money. Are you kidding? No. Give more wisdom, give more value to people through words that are correctly in divine order, so that they can use those words that contain the energy, and you breathe it in and breathe it out. So if everything you're given, you give again without giving to receive, then that entity sees you as a person. Oh, okay, we found someone who realizes it's not about having money, it's about giving value, and not some altruistic pretend, right? It's real. So if you've only had one breath in a day of that energy and then you breathe it out, that's a start. How about if you have thousands of breaths in and thousands of breaths out? Then you're flowing the currency, because it's electrical as well. Without air, you don't survive. How long are you going to survive without air? 8 minutes, you're passed out.
I may do, maybe.
So it's the same with that energy. That's an entity that you cannot survive on the earth without. But we think money is fiat currency or paper or digital numbers in a bank account or crypto. That's not what money is. That's a false understanding of it. Money is real. It's an energy. That's it. And your wealth right now is based upon how much you're able to use your time and the wisdom you're given to amplify more people to be served a better quality of life in order to be a better service. And your worth is the full accumulation of all the people to date that you have improved their lives. Because we're here to serve God by serving people. I can't say, oh, I'm serving God and I'm going to be some monk on a mountaintop. Come on.
Sure.
We serve God by serving people. We love God by loving people. And it's genuine love. It's not feigned love with an agenda attached to it. It's just real love. And that love is all part of that energy. And if you love money, you completely miss the boat.
So true.
Right? But if you love serving, now you're in that flow state. And you don't ever want to get caught serving money, because really everybody's taught with propaganda to serve money. They go, oh, I got to make money. You can't make money. Money can't be made. Money exists. It just laughs at people who think that. And the money can see that the people are greedy because they want money for themselves to accumulate it up and say how smart they are and how wealthy they are. That's not wealth. So that will burn a person right to the ground if they're trying to accumulate money, to have faith in money, to love money, to serve. Money is here to serve us. We would never serve money. It abhors people who serve it because it's an intelligence. It really is. Just think of, how do you measure, Austin, how could you measure the value proposition that you're giving to someone, a mom, right? A daughter, whoever she is, and you have given them information where they can employ that info and have 10 years more life, 20 years, 30 years, but quality life.
Right.
It's infinitely valuable. It's that valuable. Nobody could ever pay enough money from their bank account, right? Obviously, the currency is required because of the infrastructure that we were dumped into.
Sure.
But let's not pretend that we're going to take any of that with us. You are going to take your worth with you, and you can't earn salvation. That's not possible. But salvation is a whole different thing. That's a redemptive factor. That's sovereign. That's many are called, few are chosen. It's none of our business, except for your business is between you and your relationship with God. Absolutely. And that's a deeply personal thing that no one is allowed to interfere with or try to get you to believe what they believe because they believe it. And that's the whole propaganda machine. Because how many religions, like just take the Christian religion, for example, there are more than 37,000 different versions of that. Go into the Muslim world. There's thousands of versions of that. Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, they're all the same because they take versions of, they took a certain amount of truth and get some credibility with that. And then they want to inject other things in. Or you're going to live thousands of lives and you're going to finally get it right in the sand. Really? I don't buy into that. I think if I could see you right now in your spiritual being, who you are, because you don't really have a soul. You are the soul. You, the soul, are living in your physical body. Your body is not you, but it's a big part of you, but it's not you. And when my body was going to die on me, I found out, hold it, who's controlling the show here? I think my body's totally controlling me. I'm addicted to fast food. I wasn't into drinking, smoking, drugs. No, that was not my lifestyle. I was a family guy with 7 kids, but I was super sick. Then I realized my body's telling me what to do. It's actually demanding it. My body was addicted to fast foods. Wow. And when I tried to stop it, I couldn't. So I just finally realized, talk to my body like it's another person. Hey, Ian. I call my body Ian. Hey, Ian, you're acting like a temperamental, spoiled child. So you want to fight? You want to throw a temper tantrum if I don't give you the fast food today? Bring it on. Going to have a headache and a gut wrenching? Okay, I'm into it. I'm a scrapper. Let's see who's going to win. I will win because you're not going to get away with this anymore. I've been letting you control me. No more. Just like you talked about stewardship. Who owns this temple? Obviously, we don't own it. Because if you owned it, it could never be taken away from you.
Sure.
It wouldn't die. And this is attached to what people call their portfolio, their assets, their real estate, their this, their that. Come on, guys. I've set up masterminds with people who are considered very rich. And I would say there's not a single rich person in this room. In fact, a rich person doesn't even exist on this earth because you don't even own your body. And if you don't have the title deed to your body, because it could be taken away from you, what happens to all the attachments, to all the assets that you think you own? They are instantaneously disconnected from you. And there you're standing, the soul, going, wow, that's a change. Wow. Okay, this hasn't happened before. What's the next part of the journey? What are you bringing with you? You're bringing your worth, your mission, your ministry, which is not a religious term. A minister is a servant. Your ministry is to bring what you're shown, much given, much required, right? You've been given a massive amount of intelligence. You were led and directed to the mission that you're on right now. It didn't happen by chance. You were born into a family that had those traumas. And they're the best things that could have happened, even though people suffered. Because it woke you up and went, hold it, what's up? The best thing that ever happened to me was I was going to die at 49 when I was only 46. It's like, this is messed up. Something's wrong, and I think it's me. So and I found out that it was everything I was thinking, saying, and doing, and acting and reacting. And there's a term, I am. Have you ever heard that term before? I am. Well, who calls themselves I am?
God.
If I say I am tired, that's messed up. I'm using God's term and saying that he's tired. And I'm not God, but a modicum of that life energy that's in me that was put in there before the foundation of the world. I am energized. I am perfectly healthy because the body will listen to that. The body goes, really, I am? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I, the body, am perfectly healthy. And why would I say anything less? If somebody were to tell me, oh, you have cancer, that's what they tried to do.
Yeah.
Right? Back when I had this tumor in my perineum, it was nasty. It took 7 years. It grew, and through detox and all this stuff, it finally shrunk down and completely disappeared. But it took 7 years. If they would have said, you have cancer, and then I say, I have cancer. I've never had cancer.
Yeah.
People say I'm a cancer survivor. I go, no, not a chance. I have never. How do you know? Because I would never let a biopsy happen. I'm not going to let him touch me and cause a metastasis. You kidding? I had something growing in my body that was an infection, fungal infections combined with heavy metals, combined with yeast overgrowth, combined with chemical overload, combined with parasites, combined with whatever pathogenic stuff. And it was encapsulating it to protect me from being killed right away from that.
Absolutely.
It was telling me your body's not detoxing properly, buddy. Wake up. What's up? The alarms are going off. 5-alarm fire. Same with the heart disease. It's exactly the same. It's congestion. So how did that get there? Wasn't there when I was young. It was there at 46. Bizarre. How many men do you know die in their 40s from heart failure alone? Just massive numbers. Or in their 50s or 60s because they were never told how to maintain this body. That's why your work is so important, because what you're doing is and I saw that from the content you put out. You drilled down to the core, not just the root cause, but the root cause. And there might be 7 or 8 levels of that even. That's what this is all about, is men like you and I who've been given access, and we go deep and we're on mission. People say to me sometimes, because of the knowledge I gained, well, you better get a bulletproof car. I don't need a bulletproof car.
Sure.
Because when you're given a mission by the creator and the owner of the universe, you are protected, you're provided for, you're in the redemption process. All of these things are ongoing every single day, more and more. So if you're taken out for some reason, then you're finished your mission. You're on the other side, and now you're on to that next dimension. But while you're here, you are responsible. Much given, you've been given a lot. So have I. Much given, much required. So so we stand up and say, okay, show me. I'm asking out loud. I'm not demanding, I'm just asking to show me where we can get more clean signal to noise ratio. Your conversation, look how much your conversation has improved in the last 10 years. What you knew 10 years ago versus now, how much cleaner the messaging is.
Sure.
Really clean. So if you have a signal that's going out like a radio signal, a beacon, and there's a lot of confusion and noise and static in the line, it takes a lot more power. And it's very confusing when people get the signal. As you clean it up, it takes less and less energy to get the cleaner and cleaner signal. So it's pinging, be very clean with the least amount of energy with the most effect. So in your practice, have you seen the iteration where people spend even less time, less energy, less effort, and less money to get better results as you got wiser?
Yeah. I'm still like digesting everything that just happened. That was like, I felt like I was just a part of a mastermind. Like you're saying, we boiled it down to what we feel is most important for people. And I always tell people, our clients, that we want this to feel simple to them. We want to make the complex problems simpler to solve. And so, yeah, when you see something like you have, like I have thousands of times, you start seeing like the levers you can pull that yield the highest, quickest, fastest effect. And I think that's what you're talking about, like with this excellence and mastery thing. I think it's a good for, God has obviously put us on a path of helping certain people and helping hopefully a lot of people in our areas, because I think it does, the more time you spend in it, the more you think about it, the more wisdom you get, knowledge you get around it, the easier those problems become to solve. And it's not because I feel weird even having these conversations like I'm some kind of expert, because I don't feel like I'm an expert in anything. I feel like true experts, I'm in maybe again the propaganda lie of they actually have to trust the experts. And I'm like, I don't really know who those experts are anymore. But it's like when you start looking at your life, I think for me, that humility is so important, because it's like you were saying, I don't want to make it about me. I want or money or anything like that, because as soon as that happens, my mission is affected. My ministry is affected. But yeah, you do start to see the common threads with people, and you start to see the things they do and don't do and how to help them get out of it faster and help them to come to that conclusion on their own is really what I'm always trying to do. And that to me is most important, just that they can believe it and they have a true conviction about it. And I think once you do that, I always tell people, like, you don't go out and drink gasoline because you have a conviction, you have a belief that if you do that, you'll probably die. But people have these other beliefs that are pretty limited in these other categories of health, that they're doing things here and there with, it's a death by 1,000 cuts, like they're slowly killing themselves or maybe not guarding and protect themselves as well as they could and want to. It just, there's that missing belief and also truth that's being hidden. So yeah, I definitely see it as like we're truth seekers and we're trying to help show that to other people. But I think as soon as we lose sight of, like you're saying, lose sight of what our main mission is, what our main ministry is, I would never want to help somebody's physical body only and leave it at that. If I feel like if I haven't helped their soul seek truth and get closer to truth, then I really don't feel like I've done much. So that's why I initially wouldn't come out and say it, not to be secretive about it. I just didn't feel like the timing was right. But I really do feel like faith-based healing, that's true holistic healing, in my opinion, is like it has to be all aspects of what it means to be alive and what it means to be human, what it means to have a soul and a physical body. And that to me is so much more exciting too, as a practitioner, to have those kind of conversations with people and get at the heart level of why we're here and what we're doing and why it matters. And not, I always tell people, we don't want to make our bodies an idol. Like that's not the goal either. We don't want to make this everything health like what our worship is about. But we also don't want to treat it like it's meaningless either. I think having a meaningless idea that, like in Ephesians or Ecclesiastes, King Solomon saying that it's all meaningless under the sun. But really what the word meaningless means is, I think that maybe it's the Hebrew word is, and hevel is it's more something that can't be grasped. It's like a fog that kind of goes through and you can't really grab onto it. You see it, it's there, but you don't really know exactly what it is. And you can't feel it and grab it. So life is like that, at least according to that context. And I think for people walking through this life, there's tons of meaning, there's tons of purpose in what we're doing, but it's not always what we think. There's sometimes a deeper understanding that needs to be pursued. And I think God makes it pretty clear in the scriptures that, like you said, like the first and second commandment is to love him with all your heart, mind, and soul, and to love people as yourself. And I think that's hard to do. It's really hard to love people when people don't always, quote unquote, deserve to be loved. And when also you don't even love your own body, and you don't even know what love looks or feels like. And so I think having that connection back to God and having that truth be exposed to you, I think is just the building block of everything that we're doing in life. And I think through that, as if you're saying, like salvation is this sovereign thing that is given freely. But that's step one of this life. Once you've received that gift, living after that is like a whole nother thing. There's a whole nother aspect of what it means to being a Christian. That's just phase one. Phase two is now I'm walking this walk and living this life. And that's where that discernment and the Holy Spirit and having wisdom is so important and so difficult at times when you're being bogged down with the propaganda and all the deception around you. It feels pretty heavy at times, but I think having other like-minded people that are equally yoked in different ways, and it really does help make this walk feel just more important, more fulfilling, and just more encouraging while you're doing it. So I really do appreciate everything you're saying. I felt like I was so blessed by it, because a lot of people have always come to me they want me to give them wisdom or whatever, and I'm always like, I like being fed and poured into as well. And I really do just want to say thank you, because I feel like that you really just poured into my spirit quite a bit. And so I do appreciate that.
That's great. And I love what you said earlier about the expert. We are not experts. I don't ever want to be an expert, because an expert is now in the box. I know about this and this, and I'm the authority, and you can trust me. It's like, hold it. Come on, guys. We're not here to convince anyone of anything per se,
Right.
Because you just think about your life. You've convinced yourself by seeing truth. It becomes a revelatory thing. It inspires you, which means in spirit, by the way. Inspired is in spirit. So you've tapped into what is true. You're seeing the results from it, and then you're serving that, because we're here to serve people. If they see us as an expert, they miss the point. It's they themselves that are responsible for their body. If they do the right thing, they're rewarded tremendously. If they don't do the right thing, they have a price to pay they can't afford.
Yeah.
So we're simply here to support them to make a series of good decisions on their own with the data that we have seen drive results. If you feed your spirit through your mind with incorrect information, you're going to suffer. So your spiritual life needs to be based upon divine order. How does God think? How does he communicate? How does he go about judging everything? And as soon as you say the word judge, they go, oh, judgment. There's no judgment. Really? Every single person on this earth is judging every second of their life, whether they accept that or they reject that, whether they think that is true or whether they think that is false. It's constant judgment. But it's not me looking at you and going, oh, Austin, you've got all these things about you that aren't good, and I'm going to go condemn you. Sure. That's ridiculous. You're on a journey, and you're at a certain stage of the journey that you're being led to. I have no business judging you as a being, but discernment, that's a totally different aspect. Just like if we question everything, then we're going to be second guessing everything based on our imaginations and our human intelligence. But if we are inquiring about everything, that's a whole different approach. I'm inquiring, I'm not questioning. Well, some people say question everything. Okay, what they mean is inquire about everything. So we do inquiry all the time. I inquire with everything that I look at, just like you do. That's how we learn. And then we are able to support people to make a series of good decisions to convince themselves and become super enthusiastic about their mission instead of trying to get them to be on our mission. Because this mission that you're given was given to you. It's not yours, but it was given to you. Mm-hmm. And if you don't serve that mission, somebody else is going to step up and do it.
Sure.
So then you're asking, I just want to be able to be a missionary. That's not a religious term. Mm-hmm. A person with a mission is a missionary, to be able to bring the energy that I'm given. Now, whatever form that comes in, people need sustenance. I need a sustenance. You need a sustenance. We all support each other. We all do unto others as we would have them do unto us if we were them, not if they were me. A multi-billionaire, which is another fake term, but somebody with vast amounts of resources, they cause somebody to lose $1 million. It's nothing to them. I lost $1 million last week. Yeah, but that person only had $1 million and they just lost it all, okay? Because you directed them incorrectly or you did something to them. So it's like that kind of a principle. But we're talking about super wealth, spiritual. Who are you? Where'd you come from? What are you doing here? What are you supposed to be doing? Where are you going after this? And who is God? Where is he? What is he doing? Why is he doing it? How is he doing it? When is he doing it? What does he want you doing? Those are questions that you have to have answers to, because otherwise you're drifting. You don't know that you've lost direction. If you don't have a compass, you've lost direction. Sure. So it's the same with the physical health, because you and I are really talking about the physical health, which is the common denominator for everyone, regardless of their spiritual belief. And when people come to an inflection point where they have to come to reality, and they either are going to, at that inflection point, either choose reality or choose that which is propaganda-based, because that's what everyone else is doing around them. That's their business. We only encourage people. And if you're encouraging someone, just like God told Joshua and Caleb after the 40 years in the wilderness, and they were the only survivors of over 40 who actually stayed alive. And they were told, you're going to go into the promised land. There are giants. And these were titans. These were not just tall people. And the vote went not to go in 40 years before that. Now they're going in. There's 3 times in the first chapter of Joshua where God said to both Joshua and Caleb, be strong and very courageous. He said it 3 times. Now they didn't say, okay, I'm going to be strong and very courageous. They didn't say that at all. They just said, thank you. We just felt you spoke strength and courage into us. That had to come from you. We can't muster that up. We're totally relying on your strength and courage. We know there is no possible physical way that we could win any battle unless you are fighting the battle for us, through us, and you're giving us the strength. And meditate day and night. Don't go to the right, don't go to the left. Meditate in my words, my divine order words, day and night. Meditation is great as long as you're meditating on the right thing. You know, if you're going into Zen, which is nothingness, it's like, that's not going to get you too far. And they had an insurmountable, absolutely impossible task ahead of them. Absolutely impossible, yet with God, all things are possible. And it's the same with human health. People are told it's not curable. You have terminal this, you have terminal that. They really receive that and they place that upon themselves and they realize they got an impossible mission and then they fail. But with God, all things are possible. And if people don't believe in God, that's their business. But you know, what if you don't believe in God, then what do you believe? You believe in nothingness. Nothing exists and nothing exploded. And it was the great of nothing exploding. And now here we are. And there's quadrillions of designs around us everywhere, but there can't be a designer. And we have to negate the designer. Who designed the human body? Who designed an acorn? Just one single acorn falling off an oak tree could produce billions of oak trees into the future, given enough time from one acorn. Who put that blueprint in there? That thing falls in the ground and falls apart and decays, and then out of that comes life. Just like we are replicating ourselves. Look at a woman's body. Absolutely phenomenal. A woman can actually produce a human being inside their body. Wow. And then the male has the seed to plant in the field that brings that, because there's no baby born without a male providing the seed. So who designed that? So it comes back down to coming down to the earth with a thud and going, okay, show me, because I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it takes a lot of faith to believe that for sure. Yeah, I don't know about you, but the further I got along in my education, the more convinced I was that what I was told as a kid was real, which was a cool experience, because I think a lot of people go to college and they fall away from whatever their beliefs are. And some of them rightfully, like, we have to figure out what is actually what we believe, like you're seeing on that journey. But for me, like, the more I looked into science, the more I was convinced that, like, there was definitely an intelligent design and definitely a creator that did all this. And that requires far little faith compared to the idea that this was just all from nothing. So I 100% agree. Yeah, man.
And even being on target, just one last thing about that, because you stimulated a thought. Yeah. If you have like, say you're shooting a bullet or you're shooting something that has great energy and you got a bullseye 10 miles away. If you are even 1 degree off, which is not even visible hardly to the human eye, 1 degree off at 10 miles is 875 feet off target.
That's crazy.
So we got to have our sights aligned perfectly. You can't align your sights. You have to have them aligned. So the perfect one who has perfect knowledge gives you his faith, because you're told, hey, you need to be more faithful. You can't muster faith. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Now, the word of God is simply truth. You don't get faith by somebody laying hands on you and praying for you. That's not how you get faith. Faith comes by hearing. So the propaganda machine knows that. So it has as much truth as it can possibly get to get credibility. But it gets 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 degrees off, knowing no matter what you're shooting, you're going to be way off the target, because you think you have the truth, but you don't have the definitive perfect truth. So just like perfect health, I've had people tell me, oh, you can't have perfect health in this body. I agree with them. For them, that's what they said. That is true for them. But it is true for me that perfect health is attainable. And actually, in the scriptures, you're told, be healthy and prosperous, meaning not money, but healthy in your physical being, in your spiritual being, your mental, emotional, financial, domestic, and environmental being. Be perfectly healthy. Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. I can't produce that. I'm receiving that. I'm going, oh, okay, that's how it works. Oh, I'm told. I'm literally having perfection spoken into me. I can't take credit for that. Just like Joshua and Caleb couldn't take credit for being strong and courageous. It's spoken into them. So the word contains the life. So when you're speaking words that you know are helping people in your practice to have a physical healthy body, because it's going to die or be very compromised or have a very low quality of life, then you can bring the words that contain the energy. They receive those words or reject those words depending on where they're at. So when they're at an inflection point, they've come to you because they've exhausted every other means. And so our vocation, because you have your avocation where people have a job just over broke. Vocation is your actual ministry that you're being given. Each one of us have been given a ministry. All we know is that we have to be given the wisdom to fulfill the ministry because it's given to you. So what we're here doing is doing mathematics. It's really math. Even if you look at the Bible itself as a super mathematical book, they've proven it over and over again that it's a complete mathematical thing and it's solid. It has data that is related directly to reality. We're realizing things. We're seeing things the way they really are and being open to that and being chastened and being corrected and being trained. So the more we're corrected and chastened and trained, the more we can support people because they got to go through that themselves. But we're giving them access. It's an access point. We're not trying to convert them. If we're trying to convert them, why would we be trying to do that? Because God is the one who converts his children.
Sure.
But every religion wants people to believe what they believe and subscribe to that particular organized thinking that comes from men using truth, but blending in false information that they were taught that they don't even know they're deceiving people with it. So it's the same in the health world. Guys, like you should never be sick. But if you are, it's an alarm. We're here to support health. We extend life. We don't extend death. And I'm not against anything out there in the sense that I'm trying to stop big pharma or something. I care less. This is not our job to stop big pharma. Our job is to start natural health and more and more. Right? That way we don't get distracted with all the politics, with all the he said, she said, and name drops and all the rest of that stuff. Or being in those realms of power, which is totally corrupt. We're on the ground, we're in service. And like you mentioned earlier, being humbled, that's just coming to reality.
Right.
You know, and one of the humility things is that I will say about myself, I have a mind that can absorb and remember things really well. I didn't come up with that. I can't take credit for that, but I'm humble enough to admit that's true humility. Right. Or I would say, well, I'm not really anybody special. Everyone's super special.
Sure.
You, the listener, are super special. Don't let anybody ever tell you you're a speck of dust in the middle of a speck of dust in the middle of this vast universe that's drifting along through whatever. You're here for a purpose, and your purpose is very important. And so you and I bring this energy, this wisdom that we were given, so we don't get looked at as a guru or some big way up here. It's a level playing field, and there's no big I, little you. There's no big you, little I. It's a level playing field. And we surround ourselves with people who are into serving others and not being served. Because if I'm here to be served, I'm going to be faltering. But when you and I surround each other with people who are into serving other people, we're automatically served because they're sharing, just like you've shared all your intelligence with me today, just like I share intelligence with you. These are things that were given to us because we were directed, we were called and chosen to that pathway. And it makes it get real because all the biohackers, they're fun. I enjoy all the cool stuff that they're into, but I don't consider myself a biohacker.
Same.
It goes much deeper than that. It goes to the very deepest depths. Yeah. So that's where you've learned. And I see that because you can't fake that. Your practice, your mission, your ministry is definitive, and it's going to get clearer and clearer because it takes time to grow. Just like we're little babies, we want to be adults. Mm-hmm. Why? Just let yourself be a child for a while and grow up and learn the language and learn about how things work. We can't just suddenly have all knowledge. I think into the eternal realms, it's an infinite, endless adventure because there's an endless amount of things we're going to learn on this side and the other side. It's a massive adventure. And then you can meet the challenges here. How many people do you have come to you that are extremely challenged, literally life-threatening challenges, and they have to face their challenges, accept them, and do whatever it takes? Or it's the willingness to do whatever it takes. What if you're showing somebody, you're like, are you kidding? I have to do what? I was shown so many things that I'm like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Because when I first asked to be led, I woke up one morning and I just knew in my gut, I could feel it right in my gut. And it was in the middle of all the chaos with the tumor and the heart disease and the liver problem. And I just knew there were people on the earth, people like you, who exist, who have a very high level of knowledge. And then it goes good, great, greater, greatest. I knew there were people who had the greatest knowledge, but try to go find them. You can't. Because the world's too big and it's too confusing, especially in the natural health realm. It's very crowded and very noisy. So I made a very clear statement out loud in the form of a prayer. And I asked, please lead me, if you will, please lead me to people who have the highest level of knowledge. Please give me eyes to see them when I meet them, because a lot of times you don't know who you're talking to, and give me ears to hear what they have to say. And if you will do that, I will do whatever it takes, whatever I'm shown. And it was almost like I heard a voice. No voice was speaking to me, but it's like I heard someone say to me, yeah, we'll see. We'll see if he'll do whatever it takes. That'll be proven over time. And so your patients, your clients, the people you're serving, are they willing to do whatever it takes?
Yeah,
Are they willing to step up?
that's a question I ask them. And again, and getting at their why is so important because there's 4 different ways to look at it, like motivators for people. And my business partner, he verbalized this yesterday and he's talked about it in the past, but you can do things for yourself for pleasure. You can do things for other people for their pleasure, or you can do something to keep yourself out of pain or keep somebody else out of pain. And more times than not, we're more motivated by the latter. And I think for people to do both, okay, you can, or for all 4 of them, we can do things to prevent pain or get you out of pain and people you love out of pain, prevent pain, but also for the joy, for the pleasure of being healthy, not just getting to a point of feeling okay, but feeling awesome. When I was sick a little while ago, and I haven't been sick for several years, and it was a combination of a lot of travel and being in Las Vegas and all this different stuff. But I had a warning signal go off and sort of several other people in the family, and I felt pretty bad for a day and a half. And I was just like, man, this is terrible. It feels so good to feel good. Like when you start feeling good again, you're just like, this is so great. But so many people like are so accustomed to feeling bad that it's a lot of quote unquote rewiring to get their mind to catch up to what's possible. And I think that's a big part of it, is helping them to feel it initially to where they get a taste of it, to where they're like, man, this is a different feeling, a different way of functioning. And once they get a taste at it, after being in a state of just discomfort and disease for years, their conviction really increases substantially. And then their compliance increases substantially because they have belief, like they believe it's possible. They feel it. They've tasted it. Like you were saying, this great examples you were giving, the belief isn't something that's been forced upon them. Like it's something that they truly, it's their own. And I think that's where we have to, as practitioners, at least in my opinion, there has to be a certain level of, you have to get results on a certain initial level. Because if you just keep telling the results are coming soon, any day now, or it's a couple years down the road and people are still putting in the work and not seeing any outcomes, it's very discouraging. It's disheartening to put an effort and not always see glimpses of promise that you're going to be healed, they're going to be better. And so I think that really is something that I've taken very seriously with my clients, is just ensuring that they get a piece or a taste of that as soon as we can, so that from there, the rest is easier, because they can just follow a path that they know they're on the right path, and they can continue on that path as long as hopefully the rest of their life. But and again, I'm very much with you that I don't know all things, and I'm still learning a ton. And like you're saying, I look forward to learning for all eternity. And I think that's hardwired in all of us to be curious. And I have 4 kids, and I see the curiosity in them all the time. And I think at some point in life, that curiosity gets beat out of us a little bit to where it's not encouraged. But I think at our core of who we are, we're all curious creatures and curious beings that are desiring truth, like we've said multiple times during this podcast. But I think for people who have lost that curiosity, it's very easy just to go with the flow and go with the propaganda. And I just want to encourage people that are listening to just at the very minimum, dig your heels in a little bit and don't go with that flow. Start to push back just a little bit, enough to challenge the narrative and ask for God to reveal wherever he's needing to reveal to you. And I'm convinced the the fastest way to experience an answer prayer is to, at least from my experience, is to ask for God to show you what you idolize and what you're worshiping that's not him, and then to ask for wisdom. And I think those in my life, that's been 2 guaranteed prayers every time. It's been 100% success rate. And so I think the more we can do that, the more we can just experience joy while we're here, and joy in all things. And I think that's what I would call a pretty healthy life, which is cool.
I love what you said about curiosity, because when we're young, we have such a great amount of curiosity. You're seeing that in your children. It's so much fun because they want to know, right? And they're counting on you to give them the data that they require. And then that actually produces dreams. I'm not talking about dreams when you're sleeping, but the dream of where you see yourself in the future. And dreams are squashed. Dreams are cut down. Oh, you're a dreamer. It's the best thing to be a dreamer, because those dreams, those ambitions, that encouragement, that inspiration, that all comes from God. And you should be expanding your curiosity as you get older. And you're more curious now than you've ever been. So am I. And we're just getting started. How old are you right now?
35.
Okay, perfect. So you're like half my age. And we're both just getting started, because people think 37 is old. Are you kidding? I'm told in Canada I'm a senior citizen. That's a total joke. I'm also told you should be retired by now. The word retired is not even in my vocabulary. Are you kidding?
Nor should it be.
Retired? Wow. No. Who put that on people?
And that's a whole conversation. I see that's such a good conversation, because I think you get into the state of life where you should have accumulated a certain level of knowledge and wisdom that you can pass on to people and continue on the mission. And how many people, when they retire, they get a cancer diagnosis, or they have a heart attack, or they go to assisted living facility, or they distance themselves from people and they become a recluse. And I think that's the opposite of what I think we're called to do. I think now that the golden years are meant to be poured back into the people around you, because you've been accumulating that for so long. It's like, it really frustrates me when I see it. And I pray that doesn't happen to me. I really try to guard against that, because I can see the tendency of, I put in the work, I've put in the time, I've earned this, and now I'm just going to go and retire away. And it seems like the opposite. I never noticed the connection to the word, the retire. It's very interesting, but yeah, that's such a good point.
And you've only got one set of tires. You want to get them retreaded. You want to get the treads put back on, because you got a long way to go. Realistically, you should be here for your great and etc. grandchildren, because they need you.
Yeah.
They actually they're not even born yet, but they need you.
Do you think that's a part of what God says, like when to leave an inheritance? Is that kind of what you sum that up to be?
Yeah. You want to give them the inheritance while you're alive, not wait till you're passed away. That inheritance is ongoing, because you've inherited everything from your mom and dad and your grandparents and your great-great-grandparents and your great-great-great-grandparents, because they passed it all down to the generations. And if there was propaganda or false teaching in and amongst that inheritance, then it's between you and God to have that purged, so you can understand and see the way things really are. And when I say understand, it means standing under in subjection to that which is real. If I tell you, well, I just want you to understand what I'm saying. No, I'm not going to say that to you. That means like me telling you got to stand under me. That's the understand. Like, come on. We're always progressing. We're always advancing. We're always getting more wisdom. The more you've learned, the more you realize you don't know, because then it expands more. The more you have touch points to receive wisdom, the more wisdom you can receive, until you realize that it's infinite. It's literally infinite. You're not like, God's not going to run out of giving wisdom to people ever, because he is the resource of wisdom. We're here to receive that. And it's really interesting how we've been dumped into this extremely compromised place where there's nothing but deception all around, propaganda, pollution, genetically modified organisms, all these nasty technologies that people receive into their bodies that do serious damage. We don't need any of it. When we showed up on the earth, there was the earth. When the bodies transitioned from staying alive to then going into a process of death, they were just standing on the earth with trees and rocks and dirt and rivers. And they were given the knowledge to go and dig into the earth and build cars and airplanes and whatever. It all comes out from under the ground. It wasn't just here automatically. It didn't grow on trees. So it's our responsibility to use those resources. Look at the botanicals alone. There's millions of botanicals, and they're there to support us. Look at the nutrients that are in the food, making sure you keep it in the heirloom original state. And if you pray for your food, my prayer is, please bring back the original heirloom nutrients that are in this food as much as humanly possible, so that when I consume it, my body can have perfect health. And not just get rid of the toxins, but bring it back to its original, because the original is always the blueprint that your body resonates with. And your body's so intelligent that everything you consume, it can scan and read with your taste buds and your senses. And it knows exactly what that means. All those molecular frequency molecules are all communicating information and bringing the body's wisdom way up, bringing your body intelligence up all the time. Whereas people get dumbed down and they lose that body intelligence, and then their body dies. So it's a huge responsibility. So I know we could probably talk for hours. And we've gone for quite a while. Yeah.
No, again, I'm very thankful, and I feel like I've learned a ton today, and I definitely want to continue talking with you in whatever level. But yeah, hopefully I've been of some use to your audience. And yeah, I've enjoyed the conversation today. It's been really fun.
Well, it's been extremely useful, because we're inspiring each other and inspiring the listener, getting everybody in the same spiritual mode, and it's all energy. So yeah, I really appreciate your time and coming on this podcast, because it is Younger Than Yesterday is the title, and that is the goal.
Yeah.
Become younger, more youthful, more vibrant, healthier in every category, ongoing until the day you're going to leave this place. And we're going to go one way or another. So yeah. So thank you again so much, Austin. And yeah, there'll be great conversations into the future. I can feel it. And look forward to them.
Absolutely. Thanks again.